Namaste. Psychoanalysis and philosophy, the thing. What are we in search of? I think is the biggest question. I think we need to explore this question in a very deep way. And for this, we have with us our psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, Mr. Vaidya.
Namaste.
Can you explain what is meant by the thing? I mean, the thing in capital.
Um, it is a phrase that I have coined,
Oh,
and it is very near to the phrase of the all good object, which is a Kleinian phrase. It is also crudely near, but with some distance, to the phrase all good mother, which also is a Kleinian phrase. And in another way, this concept that I have coined, not concept, let me say the phrase that I have coined, is also near from a different standpoint to Kohut's concept of the self object. Although it is not exactly the self object, it's quite apart from self object, but there is one strand of similarity between the self object and what I mean by this phrase, the thing. So, this is a phrase that I have coined, and I have coined this phrase to capture our practical reality, the way we live, particularly the way we interact with people, that we are all in search of one person or one thing which can satisfy all our desires. Human existence, when we look at it, five things are very clear. First, human existence or human beings are beings of desire. Second, desires are in many colors and flavors, and they are infinite in terms of their nature and reoccurrence. Third, our capacity to satisfy our desires is limited. Fourth, therefore, frustration in human existence is a natural phenomenon, nobody can avoid it. And fifth, uh, we are hardwired almost to search for that one thing or one person who will satisfy all our desires which we ourselves don't have capacity to satisfy. And this being the case, that one person or one substance or one entity that can satisfy all our desires and offer us fulfillment, completion, wholeness, uh, final satisfaction, that one entity is what I call is the thing. I call it the thing, not a person, because we want that entity to be completely in control of us. Sorry, in our control. We want that entity to be completely in our control. And we want that entity almost like an extension of ourselves without autonomy, desire, and mind of its own. So we don't want another person. We either want a self object or a completely obedient object, and best if we can have a robot kind of a person or a robot kind of a thing that is completely in our control. And that is the kind of the thing that we are all in search of. And in our everyday interaction with people, we often secretly start desiring that the other person should be the thing that we are in search of. We start interacting in that way, and we, of course, end up in frustration. Despite repeated frustrations that go on in life, our quest for the thing is an endless quest and goes on across our life.
Is this the thing same as an omnipotent good object or the good mother?
Both are near to the thing, but they are not the same. All good object, you can call it the thing. That almost can be taken as a synonym. Uh, if the all good object is endowed with qualities of complete obedience and complete reliability, such that the all good object does not have a desire, mind, and autonomy of its own, and is absolutely loyal to our self interest and our pleasure. If such a all good object exists, then that is the thing. There is no difference between the two in that case. However, if the all good object has autonomy, mind, and desire of its own, then it is not the thing. Similarly, all good mother also is not the thing, because there are two elements in the relationship with the all good mother. One, the mother appears more powerful than we are, and there is a sort of a power differential. The mother is not uh, in control by power, although she might be in control through love. And we want the thing to be under complete control, not only through love but also through power. In fact, in case of many people, they would not like to involve love with the thing, rather have a relationship of control with the thing.
One second, one second.
So I was saying, in relation to the mother, there are two elements which are not there in the relationship with the thing. One, we realize that the mother is more powerful, much bigger, and better in many ways than we are. And it's quite apparent, you can't hide it. We can't not see it even if we don't want to. And second, mother need not be obedient even if she is good. Third, she has a mind, desire, and autonomy of her own, also compulsions of her own. However, with relation to the thing, we don't have these issues. With regard to the mother, the child may have a control through love, not necessarily through power. But with the thing, we want a control through power. In fact, many people would not even bring the element of love in their relationship to the thing, and they would want to exercise control only through power. And this is true of many people with repressed emotions, that in human relationships, whenever they look at the thing, they want to exercise a relationship of power, of sadomasochism, with very low amount of expressed love involved in that flow of events. And in that sense, the other, which is the thing here, the thing, is looked upon not as a entity with mind, autonomy, and desire of its own, not something that, even though may be more powerful than us, throws it in our face, but hides its omnipotence and allows us to feel omnipotence, partly in the act of pleasing us by self-devaluation and idealizing of us, and partly by hiding its omnipotence, and partly by projecting it onto our own by virtue of possessing an omnipotent object. So this is how we view the thing, slightly differently from the way we view the concept of the all good mother, and the way we view the concept of the all good object. But if in the all good object you put in a few elements, it becomes the same as the thing.
How does this quest or the search for this, this question of the thing manifest in our life?
It manifests in three unique ways. Uh, One is over expectation. Second is misplaced expectation. And the third is uh, idealization. I think these are, there will be many other ways also, but these are very uh, explicit and obvious ways, very vivid ways in which the concept of our search of the thing and our desperation for the thing manifests in our everyday life. For example, if you have good relationship with the teacher, the student may one day go and ask for money to pay EMI for his house, or you have a good relationship with the doctor and you go to the doctor to get you a job in a pharma industry. Now, these are completely misplaced expectations. Or you are friends with somebody and suddenly you ask for a large sum of money or to use connections of that person for something that you need to be done, you need to get done. So this sort of over expectation, misplaced expectation, idealization of somebody, these are very clear manifestations, and I think we all do it all the time, that we over expect and then be frustrated, we wrongly expect and be frustrated, we idealize and we get frustrated. And this, I think, is everyday experience for all of us to project the thing that we are all in search of and find it in people uh, in everyday life. If we are thoroughly frustrated there, then after a few years, uh, we start searching the thing in our spiritual guru, that the spiritual guru will give us everything. And then if we are frustrated there also, then we put it into God, or we put it into some mystical power or mystical process. That if we realize this mantra, then we get all the power and we can do what we want. Or if this guru gives me his power, I can do everything. And if nothing works, then we put it into God, that God will give me everything. In mythological terms, uh, there are many expressions of the thing. Just to mention it a few, okay, I come to it later, but we can see the quest for the thing in our everyday life very clearly. And we also see the quest of the thing in literature, in art, in movies, in mythology, in religion, in spirituality, in mysticism. Everywhere we see the quest of the thing.
Uh, as you've already mentioned, what happens when we realize that our quest has been frustrated?
When the quest is frustrated in the real world, we start uh, creating it in fantasies. In mythology, in literature, we find abundant examples of the thing, the one omnipotent, all good object. Only if you have that, life is fulfilled. You get that and live happily hereafter. So that quest of the thing is adequately, not only adequately, I think over adequately expressed in art, in literature, in movies, in all products of fantasy, and very interestingly in mythology. In cultures of East and West, we see this quest of the thing and the hope for the thing and the fantasy of the thing. In the West, it is the quest of the Holy Grail. In the East, it is the quest of Paras, that stone which will satisfy all desires.
Right.
It is the quest of Kamdhenu, the cow who will satisfy all desires. It is the quest of Kalpavriksha, the tree which will satisfy all desires. And we can find many other examples where one person or one thing or one animal or one tree is expected to fulfill us and satisfy all our desires. And the quest of the thing comes out in that expression.
Does art or surreal help us in our journey?
Yes, because in art and the surreal, we are able to express our latent desire for the thing. because it's very embarrassing for most of us to accept that we have such a desire. And that despite being so-called educated, rational people, mature and wise people, we are still in search of the thing and we are living that out, that search, that irrationality every day. So it's very difficult in real life to accept this embarrassing part of us. However, in literature and art, it comes out. In literature, it comes out in uh, the characters where it is just one perfect character, and if you other person has the character, the other person lives happily here. You also see that in terms of something very powerful, that the hero and the villain both are in search of. Only if you could have that diamond, you could rule the world. The Lord of the Rings. Only if you could have that ring. James Bond movies. Only if you could lay your hands on that weapon, you can conquer the world. So, in art, in literature, in mythology, in the form of Kalpavriksha or Kamdhenu or Paras or the Holy Grail, uh, we find fantasy working out everywhere in literature, in mythology, in art, in religion, in spirituality, expressing our quest for the thing. And I think for many people, God is the ultimate the thing.
Now, how does psychoanalysis look at this fundamental question?
Psychoanalysis looks at it essentially as a pathology, the infantile quest for an omnipotent, all good object, and the infantile quest of primary narcissism to lord over an omnipotent, all good object who would do everything for us, and we wallow in the bliss at the breast. And everything in the world just happens magically the way we want it, at times even without our expressing it. So this infantile, omnipotent, narcissistic quest of inertia, indolence, and indulgence is what is at the root of the quest of the thing. And rationally, not I would not say rationally, but I would say half rationally, let us say. We seek the thing through ideologies of capitalism, of communism, feminism, and so on. That through this process or through this theory or through such organization of society, we will at last reach the stage of perfection and all happiness. That somehow the thing will be established, will be achieved, or if not the thing, something close to it will be realized. And psychoanalysis warns us that this is nothing more than magical thinking and a rejection of reality acceptance. And psychoanalysis also tells us the dangers of falling in this quest, because this quest is a quest that cannot be won. It's a victory, it cannot be had. And therefore, it can only lead to frustration, anger, and all sorts of negative feelings when we realize the truth, or throw us into a world of magic and psychosis if we are just flung out of balance in that quest. And many people have done horrible things to themselves and others, or extremely stupid things to themselves and others in this quest.
So fundamentally, psychoanalysis views this quest as something totally undesirable or negative or something.
Yes, because psychoanalysis tells us that there is nothing like the thing. It's only a construction of your fantastical, magical thinking, infantile thinking. There's nothing there out in the world which is actually the thing.
But then, how has it been expressed in mythological? I mean, mythologies of the East, and
So
of the
you can
West, and everywhere.
Psychoanalysis tells us you can relish in your fantasies as much as you want, knowing fully well it is fantasy. But don't pursue the fantasy to be realized in the real world. There's nothing out there in the real world which can satisfy that fantasy. So have this reality acceptance and insight very clear that there is nothing called the thing out there. And your quest is an infantile quest. And the belief, if any, that you have that the infantile quest can be satisfied in reality is nothing more than infantile magical thinking. And it's better to get out of it and move into the adult from the child and have reality acceptance. And with reality acceptance, occasionally, if you want to pamper yourself with fantasy, do it knowingly fully well. You are pampering yourself with fantasy for a limited period of time in order to get back to reality, which is the real existence. So this is how psychoanalysis looks at it. Spirituality looks at it very differently. Spirituality believes that uh, it is possible to go very near to the thing experience, not to the thing experience, but very near to it. And that goal of enlightenment uh, enhances your quality of life manifold. And that quality of life is radically better than the quality of life which you get by the psychoanalytic mode of reality acceptance.
Yeah, so that was my next question. I mean, how do philosophy and mysticism engage with this question, and also inclusive of spirituality, as you mentioned?
Uh, Philosophy looks at the thing in a very speculative way. One is the metaphysical way of looking at it, that because in some essential sense we belong to one absolute whole, we are in search of what we have lost. And therefore, there is an ontological pressure towards a teleological goal. That because of our origin, there is a distinct direction of purpose. And we are hardwired towards it. And therefore, this practical everyday truth has a metaphysical truth behind it at its roots. Philosophy also takes up this concept in terms of ideological evaluation and in terms of the philosophy of the mind. Mysticism uses this to enhance the quality and the feeling of love, and it also takes the root of power. That can we actually have adequate amount of powers, siddhis, so that we have something near to dhati. And then there is a hierarchy of powers. The highest being leading towards immortality and ability to create what they say, uh, the ability of materialization and dematerialization, and the ability of immortality, and the ability to have bliss on demand. So these are the kind of goals, and mysticism uses it as a, a motivating tool and a purpose in its own quest of power. At times, it uses it to enhance positive feelings of love, so that not through hard work and power accumulation, but through love, one reaches the thing. In the root of power, one captures the thing by one's efforts. Of course, not the thing, but something micro version
Close
of
to
the
that.
thing, micro version of it. And in the path of love, one persuades some supernatural entity to provide one with as much of birthing experience as possible. So mysticism uses it in two different ways: the way of devotion and the way of power. And it also uses at times the intellectual discrimination, uh, using the concept of the thing to arrive at certain clarity, certain insights, and certain powers. So this is how mysticism uses it, and spirituality uses it in a very different way. Spirituality uses it as a motivator, and spirituality essentially uses it in a way that desire, which is the root of the search of the thing, cannot get fully satisfied, but it burns out in the spiritual process. So the end part, so the so what spirituality does is it puts the quest of the thing in a particular direction and guides the process. So the end goal of the process, which is realized while person is alive, is not the acquisition of the thing, but burning out of the desire for the thing, and therefore one liberates, reaches the state of freedom. So the quest of the thing results in the end goal of freedom. The freedom is a state one finds oneself in having entered into, not because somebody has got the thing or all desires have been satisfied, but all desires have burned out, including the desire for the thing. And that is where one finds oneself in a state of freedom. So spirituality uses it in a very peculiar way, that it does not criticize or condemn the search for the thing, but guides the process in a way that one ends in freedom, freedom from desires, and freedom also from our quest for the thing. So the thing is never had, one is free from the desire to have it.
Right. So as I see, I mean, as I understand from discussion, like psychoanalysis kind of rejects this whole idea or negates the idea of the thing as something infantile or something undesirable.
Yeah, it doesn't reject the idea, but it tells us it's an infantile, fantastical idea. And better you drop it,
So you need to
because
grow out of it.
yeah, as soon as possible, it does not make positive use of the idea. Whereas
Yeah,
spirituality makes a very positive.
yeah, exactly. Right. So like there are two different ends of the seeing the same thing,
Yes.
approaching the thing, psychoanalysis and spirituality.
And many people end in spirituality into freedom. But in psychoanalysis, there is no freedom from this frustration. The frustrations of having desires and desires not being satisfied. And even in end goal of psychoanalysis, we just have to learn to minimize and live with that minimum frustration. There is no freedom from frustration. There is no freedom from desire. Whereas in spirituality, the end goal is freedom from desire and freedom from the quest of the thing.
Right. And does mysticism fall somewhere in between these two
Yes,
extremes?
because mysticism can go towards spirituality, or it can just be an occult science to acquire power to further your ordinary desires in the world. Mysticism can go both ways, and that is where we have to look at scientific mysticism, uh, evil mysticism, not evil mysticism, but let us say ordinary mysticism, scientific mysticism, and spiritual mysticism. All the three are different zones of mysticism, and it all depends upon how one uses it, what are your motivations, and what is your state of purification. So, mysticism uses this concept and this quest in many different ways. And depending on who the person is into mysticism and for what, the whole context, the purpose, and the use and the end result completely changes, not only for the individual but also for society.
My last question is this concept important enough to evolve and influence us in the future?
I feel yes, because I think we are not honest in our relationships to say that we are in search of the thing. And if we had the luxury to talk about it to people that we relate to, about what exactly are our expectations, it would be quite a different context we live in. But we are so, it is so embarrassing to say these things, and we are also afraid that this will be used as a stick to beat us with in future. So both things combined, uh, not to mention social pressure and social mockery also, I feel if we could articulate our idea of the thing to as many people as we could, apart from our therapist, it would not only give us the benefits of what Lacan calls articulation of desire, but it will also enlighten us about ourselves and others about us and us about others, and that can bring about a sea change in the way the relationship context is. It can also help us to answer two fundamental questions we all have to answer for ourselves: what to do and how to live. These are two fundamental questions for every human being. And this uh, articulation of what we want in the thing helps us a great deal. It also helps us in choosing people, whom to get close to, whom not to get close to, based upon how close or how far one is from our definition of the thing. And it also helps us to mourn those parts that we cannot have, and we have to get into reality acceptance. And it also enables us to prepare and change ourselves to get those parts which are achievable but not at present given our competencies. Not only in therapy but also in everyday life, I think if we can articulate this concept to ourselves and others and work upon this concept, it can enhance our quality of life in a significant way.
Uh, Himanshu ji, it's been really interesting to explore this new phrase, the thing. I mean, so many facets of it came out during this discussion.
True.
Uh, I think it would be very interesting to maybe go a little deeper into this in some different ways if you choose to do that sometime.
Yes, yes. In fact, if you look at sadomasochistic relationships or narcissistic dependent relationships, the idea of the thing comes out very, very vividly.
Very, very, very true, very true. So there are shades of it. So in these shades, it is very obvious, but in other lighter shades, maybe it's not so obvious as you say.
Yeah. So,
But relationality will mature a lot, I think, if we are aware of this thing.
yeah, you rightly use the word shades, and that brings me to 50 Shades of Grey. Because
Right.
50 Shades of Grey is very much about the thing and uh, the uh, the sadomasochistic and narcissist dominant dependent relationships and many other relationships which we see in organizations also. The relationship between a narcissistic dominating boss and an absolutely pleasing and serving subordinate. Many other areas of life, we see
Yes, yes,
people
definitely.
trying to live out their fantasies of the thing.
So now we can observe and make out that this is the quest for the thing in relationships. It would be very interesting. So thank you so much for this interesting discussion, and we surely look forward to more, exploration of this topic
Sure enough,
at
sure
your
enough.
convenience. And thank you so much. Do write to us at hvindia@gmail.com. Namaste.
Namaste.